at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29. A lot of the comments I've seen have shown me that not everyone has watched the full 5 parts and actually comprehends the difference between having narcissistic traits and narcissistic personality disorder. I would love for the psychologist, the psychiatrist, and the therapist to meet me in the comments and really explain to people, because a lot of you have been comparing this to your previous relationships and talking about seeing red flags and how I should have noticed this and I should have noticed that. And even before I get into the whole red flag argument, let me just say this. I'm not a person who goes around trying to manipulate others, right? I don't live my life trying to control outcomes. I don't live my life trying to play God. I don't do that. So when you're a person who operates in truth and empathy and love, when people are doing certain things to you, you don't really recognize that it's manipulation. You don't look for the evil in others when you're not an evil person. As a person who operates from a place of truth, the last thing on my mind was that this person would be trying to do me wrong. And that's what happens to a lot of us. I think if you're used to manipulating others, if you're used to controlling others, the signs would have been glaring for you, right? Because that is who you are. But that is not my character. It blows my mind that somebody would try to control somebody else. It blows my mind that somebody would try to lie to determine an outcome, especially when it comes to love and relationship and marriage. Truthfully speaking, I don't operate from that mind space. So when people say stuff like, well, you should have blocked him after you guys broke up, 2 things on this. First of all, if you break up with somebody and it's an amicable breakup, why do you need to block them? Especially since this person has shown that they're respectful and they've always shown themselves to be a decent individual. I've been in other relationships and I never had to block them. I don't need to block the people I've broken up with. When I'm moving forward, I'm moving forward. I don't need to block you, right? And just so you know, when you're dealing with a person with narcissistic personality disorder, I'm not just talking about narcissistic traits. They are going to create burners. I remember specifically when he moved to Florida, I told him on the phone when I had to curse him out, I was like, look, stop calling my phone or I'm going to block you. He heard my warning and he stopped. And what he did was he unfollowed me on Instagram. I unfollowed him back and he was pretending that he had moved on with his life, but he was watching me from burners. So he was creating a facade. At the time, I didn't have that many people on Instagram, so I could see who was watching me. And his burners weren't even like proper burners because it was very clear who was watching my stories. Also, for you to get in the comments and tell people who might be dealing with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder to block them is very, very dangerous. These people have a level of obsession that's not normal. You're thinking about your ex who might have been obsessed with you a little bit. This is a next level of obsession. It's very meticulous, it's very calculated. So you're actually better off not blocking people with narcissistic personality disorder, because what happens is once they feel like they've lost access to you, they're going to go to extreme lengths to get to you. Hindsight is so easy when you are not the one being manipulated. If you've never actually been in a relationship with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, you don't have any grounds to say anything on this topic, honestly, because it's not the same thing as having narcissistic traits. And I'm going to keep repeating myself when it comes to that because I keep seeing these projections in the comments and you guys don't comprehend, right? And I get it. If you've never been there, you would not understand. A lot of them are actually sociopaths and psychopaths as well. So you're not dealing with a regular Joe here, okay? You're dealing with Joe Goldberg. For those of us who operate from a place of love and kindness, and those of us who are truly empathetic, we're not looking for the evil in people. Like, that's just not what we do. Like, I don't have the time to be looking at people's behavior that closely. I genuinely have never had the time. I've been building my career. I've been working on myself. Do you think I'm looking at every single detail and scrutinizing it, especially when somebody has put on such a great mask for me? No, I'm not doing that, because at the end of the day, I would never do that to somebody. I would never seek to manipulate. I would never seek to control, right? I'm not playing God in anybody's life. So you got to understand that when this happens to people, it happens to people who are not looking to manipulate others. So don't sit here and shame people in the comments for missing the signs when they were clearly manipulated. I do want to point out one other behavior that is a good telltale sign that you're dealing with a narcissist. It's something I did not understand at the time. After he was in Florida for a while, he told me things weren't really working out with the young women that he met in Florida, and he said they were very impressed with me. And I was very confused because I was like, why do they know about me? I don't go around when I'm dating telling my new date about my ex. Like, that's so irrelevant. Apparently what he was doing was he was telling these women that he was dating that he used to date me. I asked him, I said, well, are you telling them about me? Why am I a topic of discussion for you and your new dates? And he would say, oh, no, you're on TikTok, they've seen you, they follow your content, which is not necessarily true because my content is niche, right? In my head, I'm like, well, perhaps they saw a video of mine on TikTok, but how would they know that you and I dated unless you brought it up? So what a lot of these narcissists will do is they will make sure that the next person they're trying to date is aware that, hey, I dated her. And it helps them to come off as more legitimate, because now the woman can see, oh, okay, well, he dated her. She's a baddie. She has her life together. If she dated him, then he must be okay. And of course, we know that there are some women out there who will date you just because they know that a baddie dated you. And they're not necessarily dating you because they like you. They're dating you so that they can feel on the same level as you. What I do take accountability for is not trusting my gut from the very beginning, because everything looked right about him. He presented so well. My family loved him. My mother, my aunts, my friends. My friends even said to me, nobody you've dated has loved you so much. My parents were convinced. My family, you understand? So even when something felt off in my gut, I was listening to all of the voices around me because I trusted that they knew better than me because they were older. I remember raising specific things actually to my family and friends, and they would tell me, oh no, that's just the devil trying to destroy what you have going on. And they would tell me things like, oh no, the devil hates marriages, so that's just the devil putting something in your head. A lot of people will use religion to control you and to keep you bound to something that was never built on truth in the first place. Trust your gut. And lastly, there have been a lot of men in the comments talking about the fact that women can be narcissists as well. And that is absolutely true. We never denied that, right? My platform is primarily for women. And so that is who I speak to on my platform. There are totally female narcissists. And so if you have a story to share about dealing with a female narcissist, I encourage you to share it in the comments. I'm just speaking to my audience because we are primarily women here. For everyone saying, don't put your business out there, keep it private, it is what it is. Again, I have a platform. At the end of the day, thank God, I am the only one hurting from this situation. And if my pain serves the purpose of inspiring hundreds of thousands of women who follow me across all my platforms, then it was for a reason greater than myself. And that's what I've come to realize. Yeah, it sucks for me, but I'm gonna be okay. I was flourishing when he found me, and he wouldn't leave me alone at any cost. I'm the one who went through this horrible situation. And so many women have benefited from my transparency, and I'm so happy for that, because at the end of the day, I know that this was bigger than myself. This is my platform, and I know God gave it to me for a reason. So I'm not going to hide and pretend that things are okay. I'm going to be transparent. That is me stewarding the community of women that I've been blessed with. Again, if you are somebody in a similar situation, don't let anybody shame you for missing the signs. You're a good person. You wouldn't manipulate others. You don't think like an evil person. Of course, you're not going to look at other people's actions and immediately see the evil in them, because that's just not who you are. And if they want to shame you for being a loving and empathetic person, I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29, part 9. For my religious beliefs, for me personally, I will have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but I will expose them. Okay? Narcissistic abuse requires your silence in order to survive, and that is intentional. It's not always loud, it's not always violent, it's psychological, it's strategic, and it's designed to keep you confused. And because people who have narcissistic personality disorder are often charming in public, people are not going to believe you unless you speak up. Saying silent does not protect you, it protects the narcissist. That silence is where the abuse grows and the cycle will continue. You can choose to suffer in silence if you want, but I'm going to continue to call it out because I'm fully aware that abusers thrive in the silence of their victims. Now, one thing that I think is core and essential, and that I did not know the gravity of before dealing with a narcissist, a true narcissist. Again, we're talking about somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. Pay attention to people who have unresolved abandonment wounds. In my case, he was adopted, and he told me that he always felt like an outsider in his family. And he would repeat the same stories over and over again. One example of this was he told me that for Christmas, his sister got a computer and he got it hacked. He was adopted, and not just that, the family that he was adopted into never treated him the same as his sister who was not adopted. And one of the things he would tell me is he always believed that he had to perform to receive love. And he did overachieve in life. He got into the top US boarding school. He got into multiple Ivy League universities. He had a Wall Street internship from his sophomore year. So he's been overachieving in life. But his drive and his ambition, it wasn't passion. It was coming from a place of pain. So he built his entire identity around being too valuable to abandon. And when somebody builds their entire identity around being too valuable to abandon, they forfeit authenticity because it's a performance. They become a performer. They study you. They mirror you. They shapeshift and become your ideal partner. And they don't do this out of love. It's done out of fear of being abandoned by you. Here are some examples of how this abandonment wound actually showed up. I remember breaking up with him, and at the time we were living in New York City, and he threatened to unalive himself over the balcony in New York City. And you have to understand that actually happens in New York City. People do that. And so suddenly I wasn't just trying to leave, I was trying to not be responsible for somebody unaliving themselves. And it's also one of the reasons why it's been so hard for me to separate myself from him, because I know he has this deep fear of being abandoned and I didn't want him to harm himself. What I'm able to see now, and I hope that you're able to see this too if you're in a similar situation, is that that is a form of control. It is emotional manipulation. Another way this abandonment wound shows up is when they try to lock you in early. I said this before, but they like to do it through marriage, through getting a house with you, through having kids with you. And that all sounds perfectly normal, right? But they like to do it on an accelerated timeline. They build a life around keeping you close because they do not want to be abandoned by you. And it seems perfectly normal to everyone else on the outside, but if you know, you know. So the more obligations and ties that you have to them, the safer they will feel. They are going to become a version of themselves that they believe you cannot abandon. He started to bulk up. He got super muscular, non-stop protein like it was a job. And I just thought he had this newfound passion for lifting weights. After we got married, he was complaining about all the food he has to eat and all the protein he has to consume to maintain this image. He studied me. He asked me about the people that I dated previously. Everybody was at least 6 foot. Everybody was athletic. Everybody had muscles, right? So they're going to study the people that you dated previously, and they're going to try to match up or be better because they want to be somebody that you cannot abandon. People with abandonment wounds will also sabotage anything that they believe will pull you away from them. I already told you guys about how he tried to sabotage my career on Wall Street. His fear being that if I got promoted, I would stay in New York and he would be abandoned. And another time when we weren't engaged yet, I'd gone to a conference and I met this public figure. He had always looked up to this guy. He loved his podcast, he loved his YouTube, he loved his content, and he was always talking about him. This public figure had connected with me on socials and was trying to take me out to dinner. I let him know that I'm in a relationship right now, but I'm happy to connect business-wise. When this is happening, I'm completely transparent with my boyfriend at the time. Now, the moment my boyfriend at the time realized that this public figure was trying to take me out, he unfollowed this guy. I'm telling you, this is somebody who he looked up to for years. He's the one who told me about his content. He was always listening to this guy's podcast. He stopped listening to the podcast. He was like, nope, I'm done. I can't. Like, I don't like him anymore. He no longer watches his content. And I was like, why is all of that necessary? He was completely respectful. He completely understood that I was in a relationship. And I've shown you the messages. Nothing about it was disrespectful. But it wasn't about that. It was about the fact that a multimillionaire public figure was trying to take me out to dinner. And this triggered his abandonment wound because he sees this public figure as somebody who could potentially be the reason that I would abandon him down the line. And what's so funny about it is, despite the fact that he was no longer supporting this public figure, he was running around telling his friends and his coworkers that this person asked me out on a date. So he used the opportunity for bragging rights to be like, well, my girl's being asked out by this person, but he no longer supports him because he sees him as a threat. And that is what narcissism looks like. It's insecurity dressed up as confidence. Now, was he aware of his abandonment issues? Yes, he was aware of his abandonment issues. He's actually been seeing a therapist, but he hasn't been dealing with his abandonment wounds with the therapist. And again, individual therapy rarely works for people with narcissistic personality disorder because there's nobody there to ground them and keep them in check with reality. They don't take the mask off. They don't take it off in therapy. So when I picked up on certain things after we got married and I suggested that we go to couples therapy, it was the best decision that I ever made. Because as I said, the couples therapist immediately clocked that he lacked empathy. So people with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy. They can perform it, but it's a very surface level performance. Now, if you've been with somebody who has these deep abandonment wounds, you already know how hard it is to leave. Even if they're hurting you, you don't want to be the one who abandons them because you already know that they have those childhood triggers. So there's a part of you that wants to protect that little child inside of them because you know that they're hurting, but you're doing it out of pity and out of fear of being the one who abandons him next. Do not let the guilt stop you from leaving a situation that is harming you. Do not allow it to stop you. So many of us were abandoned by our parents, by our families as children, and we chose to heal instead of hurting others. So many of us were neglected emotionally, physically by our parents. In my case, I chose to heal. So what happens is a lot of us, we choose to protect others. We choose to take care of others because we don't want them to feel what we felt as children. But you have to remember that it is a choice. Whatever you do with your pain, it's a choice. Some of us chose to heal and we chose to be better people, but people with NPD, they do not choose healing. They choose to weaponize their wounds against the people closest to them. And if you're their partner, you're getting the worst of it. They're going to sabotage your career, your peace, your joy. Because the more you grow and the more that you thrive, it triggers that abandonment wound in them because they believe that you're going to abandon them if you achieve a certain level of success. In my case, he created fake accounts. He left hate comments on my videos from fake accounts. He would attempt to suppress my content because his fear was if I get too big, I'm going to abandon him. So despite the fact that I was a content creator before we got married and he was fully aware of that, he was trying to sabotage my growth as a creator as well. What's funny about it is that he benefited from people knowing who I was because he would come home and tell me that his clients follow me and they would tell him, oh, your wife is a finance baddie. I love her content. So he gets a little kick out of it, right? It's a little ego boost for him. But at the same time, his abandonment wound is triggered the more that he sees me rising. And even right now, as we speak, instead of acknowledging his wrongdoing, he's trying to make threats to sabotage my career because his objective right now is to get me down so bad that I have no choice but to stay with him. But he picked the wrong one. Now, if you're going through something like this and you're leaving the situation, what I will say is that the piece in all of this is knowing that you never knew the real them. You knew and you loved the mask, the show that they put on. You did not love the person because they never showed you who they truly were. That's the saddest part of all of this because they never love themselves enough to face themselves. So they lie, especially to themselves, and they will lie to you up until the end. I do pray for his healing. I pray that him and others suffering from NPD will choose to go back to that little wounded child. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the people who are trying to help you. You have to face yourself in order to heal. Until you acknowledge the wounds and until you're able to see the pain, the abandonment, the betrayal for what it was, until you're able to confess what has taken place and how it's made you feel, healing will not take place. In any event, his unresolved trauma and pain was never mine to bear. If you're in a similar situation, remember that you were not his therapist and you were not his savior. So where are we now? He's threatening to sabotage my career to get me to be quiet about his wrongdoing. Now, I have withheld a lot of information about what has taken place here. I have honestly given so much grace. I've honored him as much as I can despite everything that he's put me through. And if you knew, I have chosen to withhold that information so far, but I also know that the truth is what sets people free. Him and his lawyer have said that this little story time has already gone viral. And to that I say, if you call this viral, wait until I finish the story time with my receipts. I really haven't gotten to the meat of the matter. I really haven't given you guys the full tea out of kindness. And I am a really kind person until I'm not.